Joining us on the show today is a chartered accountant, Omotola Hassan, in the studio. Also in the studio in Abuja, we have Ajuri Ngelale, the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs. We'll come to you, Ajuri, a bit later, but I'd like to hear our guests' thoughts on this issue before we come to you, Ajuri. So, Omotola, we've been talking about the issue of taxation. Federal government wants to begin to build tolls on the federal roads, and people are saying, why taxes? You know, we are hearing the fact that they're going to be taxing even our phones, transactions, possible increase in tariff for next year. And Nigerians are saying, why? But economists are saying, if you don't tax, that many countries around the world, actually, Nigeria has the lowest taxing rate in the world, well, amongst the lowest. So how do we get out of this quagmire of ensuring that we have enough sufficient taxes to economic development?
You know, when you're preparing budget, of course, revenue is something you have to pay particular attention to. There is no way you're going to prepare your budget without paying attention to revenue, because it dictates everything.
Yeah, but why must it come to us? Why can't they?
Yeah, I'm going to go to that. And that's why I said the approach through the federal government is trying to achieve that intent is what we're not comfortable with. Okay. Now, look at there's fiscal policy. Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 says that your budget deficit should be within the range of 3% GDP. And so if you're thinking of your expenditure increasing, you're also going to be thinking of revenue. So at the end of the day, even if you have a budget deficit, it's still within the range stipulated by FRA 2007. Now, and again, like you said, that every other country, if you look at their budgets, you will know that Nigeria is far behind. And of course, from the budget, you can tell the standard of living of the citizen of that country. Take, for instance, a neighboring country like South Africa. Their budget is way higher than what we have. Looking at the population, they are barely 58 million naira, and their budget is like
58 million people.
58 million people, sorry. And their budget is like $92,000. Now, compare that to Nigeria of 200 million population, and our budget is less than 20 million naira, $20 million. You understand? And looking at a country like Ghana, that our population is like, I think 15% of Nigerian population. But our, what's it called now? The budget, the difference between our budgets is nothing at all. Which means they make more provision for their population than Nigeria does. And that's the reason for revenue generation. We actually need to do something.
But you see,
so that I understand where you're coming from, and I totally agree with you that the burden is on the final consumer. The method through which they are trying to get all this revenue is actually on a common man like Nigeria.
But the board, we knew about this things. Why do Nigerians act as if we had no idea? When they were telling us that, when they put together the budget, part of what FIRS was supposed to, their plan was to come to us for the taxes. They're saying that they cannot sustain the revenue from oil anymore. That tax, they're going to have to increase the tax net. Where was that tax going to come from? It's not from us.
And then the point is, if you see the result of the tax being collected, you'll be good. Do you understand? If I see what my tax is being used for, then I won't have reasons to complain.
Thank God we have Ajuri with us, because he's somebody I think can speak on behalf of the government. Since we're talking about the government, let me bring in Ajuri at this point. Ajuri, are you still there?
I am here, Mariah. Good morning.
Good morning
to the ladies, and good morning to our viewers.
Yes. So you've heard our conversation so far concerning issues of taxes. Nigerians are worried that we are continually being asked to pay taxes.
Yeah, thank you, Mariah. Look, I'm very sensitive to Nigerians who say, well, why is it that we're being taxed if we're not seeing the kinds of services at the quality that we want to see them? I think that is an absolutely valid concern and reservation expressed by our people. And this is why I think when you look across sectors, there's a consistent thread. I'm going to start with the power sector, for example. As you mentioned earlier in the program, they talk about increasing the tariff, etc. Well, the federal government has been very, very clear in its position, not just the minister, but also at the level of the presidency, that our people should not pay for power that they are not receiving. That there is a mandate in place that meters must be provided to power consumers in the country. So it's that same idea. Look, our people are dignified, our people are pragmatic, and they're informed. They're not looking for handouts. What they're looking for are quality services. And if you provide those quality services, Nigerians are happy to pay because if, for example, if power is being supplied, then they're not having to spend money on diesel and PMS for their generators at home, while now having to pay estimated billing for power that they're not receiving. So I think what in all of this is to say that if we provide the services and we remove the sharp practices, Nigerians are going to be very happy to pay whatever's required for that service. And I think what we're seeing on the part of the federal government is a determination to ensure that those sharp practices are removed. I mentioned in the power sector them saying no more estimated billing, that Nigerians should not pay for crazy bills anymore for power they're not consuming. I am not suggesting here this morning that every issue that is wrong in the power sector, for example, has been solved or corrected. We're not living in some sort of alternate universe. We're here, we see what's going on. So that's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is on the part of the federal government, the reason why we put in the meter asset provision scheme, for example, was to say we have to begin, these distribution companies must meter our people. They must meter our people. Our position is very clear. Now, do we have 100% compliance as of right now? No, because we have to obviously produce the meters and make sure that they get around the country. So obviously it's a progressive process, but what we're saying is we're not tolerant or accepting of the continuation of this estimated billing cycle that has been put in place over the past several years. But the larger point I was making is the thread is that in the road sector, we've been talking about tolling, for example. The federal government is saying, look, when we reintroduce these tolls, we're not reintroducing tolls on roads that are decrepit, that are washed out with huge potholes and are in terrible condition. What we're saying is that federal resources are being put into reconstructing key roads, like, for example, the Lagos-Ibadan expressway that you touched on. We all know that that was under a concession agreement for over 10 years. Nothing was done on that road until this administration came in and said, we're going to apply federal funds to build this road, expand this road, and then once that road is completed, we now need to maintain that road. And not only are we going to bring in the toll, but we're not going to do it like we used to do it, where they would collect cash and where you had all sorts of corruption and Nigerians didn't have confidence in how those funds were going to be utilized. What we're saying now is the tolling process is going to be made cashless to ensure that you don't have that human-to-human interaction and corruption as we want to maintain our roads.
Now you can catch up with your favorite programs on TVC. Log on to www.youtube.com/TVC Entertainment. Join the fun.